Hilchos Shechitah Perek Chi'i, the laws of ritual slaughter, chapter 9. We're continuing the list of the 8 categories of treifa, the 8 categories of mortal wounds that make an animal die within 12 months. And according to halacha, that's considered treif. Even if you slaughter it, it doesn't help. Today we're going to be covering 3 out of the 8 categories. Snapped, psuka, torn, kru'ah, and fallen, nifula. So we begin with snapped. Psuka ketzad, what is referred to by snapped? What needs to break in the animal to make it treif? So what we're going to be really taking a look at is what's called the chut hashidra, the spinal cord. If you look at this picture of the animal, you can see here's the brain, and from the brain it exits the spinal cord, and in the animal it kind of goes on a dip. It goes down here, and then up by the rib cage, all the way back till where it splits by the thighs. So the Rambam is going to soon define exactly where the beginning and the end of the halachic spinal cord is, but that's the part of the animal that we're looking at right now. So if we then zoom in to the spinal cord on a cutaway, here you can actually see the different parts. Under the spinal cord runs this thick bone, that's the backbone, that's called the actual shidra, the actual spine. And then where the vertebrae connect to the ribs, you have inside that the actual spinal cord. Spinal cord, if you zoom in even further, I'm not sure if you can see clearly in this picture here, but this part is the inner part, that's called in Hebrew the moach, the nerve tissue, and then around it is what we call today the meninges. Right, so somebody has meningitis, that means that this part of the spinal cord is infected. The meninges are actually 3 small layers of membrane that begin in the brain. In chapter 7 of these, or chapter 6 of these laws, we had Rambam discussed the 2 layers of membrane around the brain, the dura mater, the pia mater. They actually continue around the spinal cord. They encase the brain, and they continue down, covering the entire spinal cord, along with another middle layer that, if you're curious, called the arachnoid mater. And these 3 tiny little layers, one on top of each other, they cover and hold the nerve tissue of the spinal cord in place. So the spine bone itself is called the shidra. The spinal cord is called the chut hashidra. And the chut hashidra has 2 parts. The or, the skin, that's the meninges, and the moach, the marrow, literally, which is referring to the nerve tissue. So the Rambam says like this. What's considered snapped for these halachot? Chut hashidra shenifsak ha'or, ha'choifes ha'moyach. The spinal cord, if the skin, the meninges that's surrounding the marrow, the nerve tissue, if the skin snaps, treifa. Just that is a fatal defect and makes the animal into a treifa. So long as most of the circumference of the meninges snaps. But if the skin of the spinal cord cracks lengthwise, or just gets a puncture, doesn't go around the circumference, muteres, then the animal is actually permitted. Same thing if only the spine itself, the backbone here. If the bone is broken, but not the cord is intact. Or the nerve tissue inside of the meninges gets softened, becomes a little wobbly. Since the skin around it, the meninges is intact, the animal remains permitted. Halacha beis, humrach hamoyach, v'nishbach kamayim. If the nerve tissue liquefied, it became pourable like water. If you were to hold the spinal cord in your hand, you can literally go back and forth and you'll hear the sloshing of the liquid inside it. Or even if it doesn't slosh back like water, but at least it's like wax that melted. That's how soft it is. Till the point that if you were to hold the spinal cord, whatever is on top couldn't support itself, it would just simply droop because of the liquefaction. Harezu treifa, says the Rambam here, even though the meninges are intact, the skin outside is intact, but the spinal cord inside clearly has become fully diseased, and therefore the animal is treif. If the spinal cord, if you were to hold it in your hands, it would droop, but not because the inside material has softened, simply because the spinal cord became so thick that it doesn't support its own weight. So it's not able to stand because of its heaviness. Harezu safek, this is a doubt. We're not sure if this shows on disease or it's simply a condition that the animal grows and the spinal cord is too thick. Says the Rambam halacha gimel ad heichon chut hashedra. Until where does the spinal cord go? You're telling me the spinal cord skin cracks, this cracks. Or how do we define the length of the cord? Says the Rambam, tchilasai mibachutz lapoilin should be tchilasa oiref. It begins right outside what's called the occipital condyles. You see here the brain? But right before the brain splits into the spinal cord, you have these two little balls of some shape. They're called poilin in Hebrew, condyles in English. And right after you pass those condyles, that's where the spinal cord begins. And it ends ad soif parsha shniya, until the end of the second section. We'll soon see what this means. Where after the second section, all that remains is the third section. That's right next to the tail, right where the tail begins. That's where the halachic spinal cord ends. Now what does this mean? First, second section, third section. Says the Rambam, b'sholish parashi yishein. There are three sections. The eluhein, and they are shloisha atzamos, dvukin ze bazeh, three bones stuck to each other, lemata mechulios shel shedra, right under the vertebrae of the spine. Today we identify in modern anatomy that every spine, both human and animal, has what they call 5 sections. So I'll just show you on the animal over here. You have the ones right near the neck. Those are called cervical bones in the spine. Yes. Then you have thoracic vertebrae. That's the ones that go over the breathing implements of the animal. Then you have what's called the lumbar vertebrae. That's right after the rib cage ends. As the vertebrae continue, then you have the lumbar. Then you have what's called the sacral vertebrae. They're a little lower here. And then the coccygeal vertebrae. Right, yes. So for the man, it's right at the bottom of the torso. And for an animal, it's right by the nail. Now, the Rambam says, these are the bones that are under the vertebrae of the spine. So we're going to see that the vertebrae of the spine are a reference to the vertebrae that are attached to the ribs, the thoracic vertebrae. So it would seem that when the Rambam says the three bones right next to the vertebrae of the spine, he means the lumbar vertebrae. Now in modern anatomy, we identify 6 bones here. They're called L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. But maybe each 2 of these vertebrae is considered, according to the Rambam, 1 bone. Because indeed over here begins the tailbone, officially. So when the Rambam says, Hasmucha l'tchila sa'alya, it's right before the beginning of the tail, this can be classified as the beginning of the tail. And the shalish parashia is the 3 sections would mean the 3 groups of 2 bones in the lumbar vertebrae. That's what it seems to be. Because Rashi has a whole different interpretation. In the Talmud, it's a whole different part of the animal's back. It's more over here. But according to the Rambam, the consensus seems to be that he's referring to what's called the tzlois katanis, the small ribs, the small vertebrae right after where the rib cage ends. So that's my guess that it's over here. And that's what we're going to leave at. This is all for the animal. So according to the Rambam, the halachic spinal cord begins over here and ends in the second section. So basically 4 bones in to the lumbar vertebrae. Now, that's all for an animal. V'chut hashedra ba'oif. For a bird, where does the spinal cord go for a bird? Ad bein agapayim, until between the wings. Between the wings, there's an argument between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, if it refers to right here, where the wings attach to the body, or back here, where the wings fold against the body. It's based on an argument between Rashi and Tosfos, but even till halacha, it's argued about as to where we go. The spinal cord definitely begins over here, right where the brain ends, and it goes down either to here or to there. By the way, most of these pictures, again, are from the Art Scroll Gemara, so super thankful to them. But under these spots, under means further back in the animal or further back in the chicken, we don't care. Even if the spinal cord, even if we see the meninges and the marrow continues behind there, we don't care about it. Whether the skin snaps, whether the nerve tissue inside becomes liquefied, it doesn't matter. That's all the category of psuka, of snapped. It's a reference basically only to the spinal cord and all the laws that accompany the spinal cord. Now we go on to the next category of treifa, which is called krua. It says the Rambam, krua ketzad, what is considered to be torn. And as we're going to see, just like psuka was one area on top of the animal, krua is going to be one area on the bottom of the animal. You have like this, basar ha'chayfe esroiv ha'kares, the flesh which surrounds most of the digestive stomach system of the animal. Take a look at this picture, you can see it here clearly. You look at an animal, so the frontal part is encased by the rib cage, but then the rib cage kind of heads upwards diagonally, leaving most of the bottom of the digestive system outside of the rib cage. So this area is called the basar hachayfes reiv hakares. It's the flesh which surrounds most of the paunch. It doesn't surround all of the paunch because some of the paunch is fully encased in the rib cage up here. But it definitely covers most of it. V'hu hamakam min habeten, says the Rambam. It's the place in the stomach. She'im yikara yetzeh hakares, that if you're going to tear it open fully, if you draw a line like the butchers actually do when the animal is slaughtered, they draw with their knife from here all the way down till here. The paunch will literally exit that wound. So the Rambam says, Im nikra basar zeh treifa. If this flesh is torn, the animal is treif. Now what does it mean torn? We're going to see what he means by torn. Torn doesn't necessarily mean like what you think, that it's sliced from here all the way down to here. Torn simply means that it's torn into. Even if the tear doesn't reach all the way into the paunch till you reveal the paunch. You may not be able to see it, but you've torn into the flesh. As long as you tore into most of the length, let's say from here to here is 4 inches, so you tore in more than 2 inches inwards towards the animal's flesh, or it was removed, treifa, the animal now becomes treif. Many of the commentators argue on the Rambam and say you actually have to make a hole that goes all the way until you can see the paunch. But according to the Rambam, it's most of the length of the way in. How long does the tear have to be? In other words, it has to go inwards most of the way. How long this way does it have to go? So the Rambam says, on a regular animal, oirech tefach, just a handbreadth. 3-4 inches, you tear 3-4 inches lengthwise, and inwards it goes most of the way in till where the paunch, the digestive system is, it's treif. But if it's a small animal, and by small we don't mean a small type of animal, we mean a small version of the same animal. So if it was a big ox, you need a tefach. If it's a small ox or a small calf, and then most of the length of this piece of flesh, so most of this whole area from here to here, in a small animal it could actually be less than a handbreadth. So the Rambam says we refer to the majority of the length. Even if the tear in total is not 1 tefach long, treifa hoyel v'nikra ruba, the animal is treif since most of it has been torn into. Halacha vav nikdar habasar hazeh beigul oy ba'orech. What if you didn't make a tear, a long tear? You made just a poke. You poked in a circular motion or a little oblong, a little oval motion. So the length may not be a tefach, but the total area that you took out could equal a tefach if you measure the area. Says the Rambam, im hoya yeser mikesela. If the circular size of the tear is bigger than a sela-sized coin, sela is an ancient coin. Enough room to put in 3 date pits, one next to another. With pressure, that hole is big enough, the animal is treif. If you stretch apart the area of this tear, it's going to come out to be 1 tefach long, and therefore it's forbidden. Halacha zayin, included in the category of torn, if an animal's skin was completely flayed, maybe it got burnt, whether someone did it by hand or through a sickness, it's basically standing there, exposed flesh with no skin, that makes the animal treif, gluda. That's called in the Talmud gluda. Gluda means flayed, peeled back. But if it was totally flayed, besides for a sela diameter, the diameter of a coin, across the entire spinal cord, so basically in this area, all the way up top over here, on top of the animal, all the way along, there was a thick strip of skin that remained, but the sela size in diameter, plus v'reichav sela ala tabor, v'reichav sela al rashe yivareha, a sela size over the belly, over here, and at the edge of each hoof, there's a sela size of skin, then harezu muteres, then the animal is permitted, because that's enough skin to regenerate across the entire animal. What if the opposite is true? The animal has all the skin besides for those areas. You took off a thick strip, a sela diameter from the entire spine, everything else is left, or from under the belly, or from by the edges of the hooves. Ushar kala irkayim, the rest of the skin is there. Harezu safik, it's a doubt. V'yirah elisha matirnei, so the Rambam says, it seems to me that this is one of the doubts where you can be lenient and you permit the animal. So that is the category of torn, dealing basically with the underside of the animal and a fully flayed section of skin. And now we move on to nefula ketzat. What does it mean when an animal falls? I have some funny videos to show here. Let's say an animal falls from a high place, which is 10 tfachim high at least, 35-40 inches or more. And one of its organs, as we'll soon see in a second, this means an internal organ. One of its internal organs was crushed. That fall will make the animal treif. What does it mean crushed? What does it mean that an organ gets crushed? The limb is crushed, it gets diseased, sick because of the fall, to the point that its form is no longer recognizable. It loses its shape. It didn't get a hole, didn't get cracked, didn't get broken, it just got disformed. That makes the animal treif. Similarly, even if it didn't fall, there's some cruel shepherd just hit the animal with a stone or with a stick and crushed one of its limbs. Treifa, the animal is treif. Now we're not talking about an outer limb, the back or the leg or this. Which limbs are we talking about? Internal limbs. And therefore we're going to see later in the chapter that this whole thing of a fallen animal means that you have to slaughter it later and then check the whole inside to see that none of the inside limbs were crushed. Now when the Rambam says that it has to be from a height of 10 tfachim, there's a few exceptions. First of all, the Talmud says that from the bottom of the floor till an animal's belly is 6 tfachim. There's 6 tfachim of area between the animal's belly and the floor. So really, when we talk about animal falling, it only has to fall, according to the commentaries, from a 4 tfachim actual height. Because the 4 tfachim of height plus the 6 tfachim till its belly will constitute 10 tfachim. Also, the Kesef Mishnah writes, it's only if the animal fell totally unaware. But if somebody pushed it, then even from a lower height, the push will have that effect. When the animal falls, it will crush the internal limb. So now, if an animal falls off of a roof, just to enjoy some Torah, we have to take a look at this cow. Got onto the roof of the barn. The video is not showing so well. Boom, there it goes. It falls. You know, cows can jump 5 feet high.
Wow.
So the animal jumped under here, it falls, but then look what happens. It gets up and starts walking away.
Yeah, but it landed on that soft mud and it also landed on its back.
So yes.
Kind of like
So that's why you have to take the fall into account. The Rambam says, if an animal falls off of a roof, if it then walks away, we don't have to worry that the fall had a bad effect. Only if it stood up and it couldn't walk, then we have to worry about it. And we'll soon see what it means to worry about it. What if the animal jumped on its own? It didn't fall. See, that cow fell off the roof of the barn. What about if it jumps off purposefully? This was a video that was going viral of a dog that jumped off a 5-story building. If you can see. Can you see here? Check this out. That's a dog. It's on a 5-story building of a building under construction. Takes a look. Watch. It's incredible. It's funny. So there he is. It jumps. See that? Circles following. It lands over here on the floor and then just runs away. Literally. I'll send you the video. It's not playing so well over here. So kafza machmas atzma, if the animal jumps on its own, that means it knows where it's going. It's couching its fall. Ein chayshish la. We don't have to worry about it when the fall is done. It's okay.
if it's not injured.
Huh? Well, of course, yeah. The whole idea of fallen is that you can't tell whether the internal organs were injured. So then whether you have to worry or not will dictate whether you have to check it or not. Hinicha lemaila umitzah lemata. You left your animal on top of the roof and you find it down below. Ein chayshishin lashem nafla. You don't have to worry that maybe it fell. It probably just took a walk the same way it got up, same way it got down. Halacha yud zecharim haminagchin zeh male animals that butt heads. This is a big thing in Korea. They do this a lot. They have these male bulls that go at each other. Either they dehorn them, as in this picture, or they actually have them with horns. And then it's a whole competition, which animal can gore itself out. So in this case, when the animals butt heads, ein chayshishin lahen. we don't have to worry just from the budding that they're going to endanger themselves. But if as a result of this battle they fall down to the ground, now you have to worry that something happened inside. Same thing if you see an animal dragging its feet, you don't have to worry that maybe it crushed one of its internal organs or its spinal cord cracked. No, it's dragging its feet because its feet are hurting, not for any other reason. Thieves who steal sheep and then throw them over the fence, back over the pen. If we discover this animal, we don't have to worry that it has crushed organs. Because when a thief is stealing from your pen and he's throwing it out, he's going to make sure it doesn't break because he wants to keep it for later in good quality. But if they're doing tshuva, they're not thieves on the way out. They're thieves on the way back in. They're returning the sheep, throwing them back into the pen. If they're doing it out of fear, it seems like they were caught, then you have to worry because they don't care. They're just going to throw it into the pen and just get away from the scene as quick as possible. But if they're throwing it back to really, really do tshuva, then we don't worry. Because they want to get them back complete, and they're going to be careful the way they throw them out. When you put down an ox in order to slaughter it, today they do it with machines, but in those days you have to basically force the animal down into an upside down position in order to slaughter it. So when you do that, even though the ox falls down with a great fall, with even a sound, it makes a sound as he bangs against the ground, you don't have to worry. The ox knows what he's doing. He sticks his hooves into the ground and he holds strong until he falls to the ground, and so the fall won't injure his internal organs. If a person struck an animal on its head, and you can see the black and blue mark, goes all the way down to the tail, or you hit it on the tail, and the black and blue, the wound, extended all the way to the head. Or he hits him with a long staff that covers the entire spinal cord on length. He bangs it, and he banged the entire cord. You don't have to worry about this hitting. But if there are little protrusions coming out of the stick, then you have to worry because the blows came individually. Each part hit another part of the animal's back. Also, if you hit it with a stick and it only partially reached the spine, it didn't go all the way across, then that's a reason to worry because that blow would be with more force on one area of the spine and could have produced an internal damage. Also, if you hit the animal widthwise across the back, you also have to worry that it made a damage in the internal organ through the hit on the spine. If a bird smashes into something hard, a few years ago there was a whole big issue in Philadelphia. These skyscrapers were getting tons, like 1,500 birds crashed into the skyscraper windows in Philadelphia. No one knew why. And this could happen. A bird smashes into a window. Something hard. Like a pile of wheat, a box of almonds, something like that. That crash makes us worry that the internal organs were damaged. But if a bird crashes into something soft, like folded clothing or straw or ash, something like that, we don't have to worry about it because it's only soft, it's going to break the fall, nothing happened to the bird. If, unfortunately, an animal's wings got stuck to glue while it was being trapped and it struggled, if it got stuck with one wing, we don't have to worry about it, nothing happened. But if it got stuck with both its wings and it's struggling with its body, or according to some, it got a wound on its body, now we have to worry that the bird's internal organs were damaged. If the animal got crushed against the water, I wonder if I can show you this here. Can you see this? Take a look at this. You want to see a bird crashing into water. Osprey. Boom. You can look at that. Crashes into the water, and it's fighting with a salmon. That's why it's struggling to get back up. You can see under there is holding a salmon. But the point is that a bird crashes into water. And sometimes the water,
That's how they fish.
well, yeah, this one is fishing in particular. But you know that water sometimes when you crash into it can be harder than a rock. Because of the density, the way you hit it, if you hit it, it could be really bad. So the Rambam says, what happens if a bird hits itself on water? If after the crash, the bird can swim upstream for the length of its own body against the current, no need to worry, it's a healthy bird. But if it just swam downstream with the current, now we do have to worry that maybe something happened. In its bones, maybe the water is just making it go, it's not going on its own accord. But if it precedes a piece of straw or stubble floating on the water, so you know it's actually going faster than the current, that's swimming on its own, no need to worry about the animal's internal organs. Now, we keep on saying the words worry, not worry. What does it mean worry, not worry? It says that wherever we say that from an animal's or a bird's fall, we don't have to worry, that means mutter lishchet miyad. You can slaughter the animal or the bird right away. No need to check whether a limb was crushed. However, wherever we say that you have to worry, that means if you do choose to slaughter it, you must check the entire internal cavity, from the skull of the head to the back of the thigh. If you find any of the types of treifos which we listed in the last few chapters, or one of the internal organs became deformed, the animal is treif. Even if it's such an internal organ whose whole existence doesn't matter. If it was removed from an animal, the animal would still be kosher, like the spleen and the kidneys. If it's deformed, it's treif. Like we kind of had yesterday. We don't need you here, but if you're here, you got to be here all the way. We don't need the spleen or the kidneys, but if they're here, they can't be deformed. Except for the uterus. If the uterus is crushed completely or deformed, then the animal is still permitted. Also, when you check an animal, you don't have to check its main pipes, the esophagus and the trachea, because a fall won't do anything to soften them. If an animal literally fell off a roof and didn't get up, this is the worst level of nefula. This is like an actual fallen animal. Before we talked about an animal that fell and it got up, it couldn't walk, it didn't even get up. This is an even higher level. As the commentaries explain, when an animal falls off a roof and doesn't even get up, chances are something got deformed in the body, but you'll only be able to see the deformity after 24 hours. So you cannot slaughter the animal till it waits 24 hours. If you slaughter it in this time, the whole animal is treif, because maybe you just can't see the deformity, but it's there. Even when you slaughter it after 24 hours, it requires to be checked, and that's when you'll be able to see if there is a deformity, and if there is, it's treif. If there's not, then it's not treif. Somebody stepped on his foot, trampled a bird by mistake. Or an animal tramples a bird. Or smashes it into the wall. But the animal, or the bird is still convulsing. You wait it 24 hours, then you slaughter it, and you check it as we explained. If these signs, the two pipes, became dislodged, they're hanging out, treifa, the animal is treif. Even if it doesn't come as a result of a fall. Also, if the two pipes here folded inwards over themselves, it's also treif for a different reason, because they cannot be slaughtered. When they're hanging and loose, they cannot be slaughtered. But if, remember this part, the initial part of the esophagus, it's called the courtyard of the esophagus. If this slips loose or becomes dislocated from the jaw, the animal is permitted, because anyway this area cannot be slaughtered. It's not kosher to slaughter an animal over there, as we explained, and therefore its coming loose doesn't make a difference. Only if later into the animal over here, if this part came loose, then the animal is a treif because it cannot be slaughtered.